Thank you all for coming out tonight. A little bit about myself. My name is Michael Clark. For the past 8 weeks, I've had the pleasure of serving as the Town of Collierville Director of Community and Economic Development. So I oversee both the economic development side as well as planning, engineering, and building services. Originally, I am from Michigan. I received an undergrad in land use planning and management from Northern Michigan University, and then a master's in urban and regional planning from Western Michigan University. I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about affordable housing. It's a really complex topic, and there's a lot of people that I don't think they fully understand the dynamics that goes into it. There's a lot of controversy and misunderstanding of what it is, what it needs to be, and more so is that it can't be isolated in a box. This is an adaptation of a presentation they gave a couple of years ago. I also was able to get help from the town planner, Jamie Gross, in some of the current development activities that are occurring to help address some of the questions that might be coming about. So the first question is, what is affordable housing? Well, affordable housing is defined by the Department of Urban and Housing Development, or HUD. And essentially they say it's approximately 1/3 of your income going to housing costs. This is not just your rent, but this is also your utility payments, your insurance, and all the other dynamics that come into how much does it cost you to live in a place. There's some government programs, however, that take it a step further, and they really look at affordability based on different income demographics. Specifically, this chart here explains what it is right now in the Memphis MSA. You'll hear me throw out some of these letters and terms. MSA is Metropolitan Statistical Area. So it takes not only the city of Memphis, Collier, Germantown, Bartlett, but the entire area kind of congregates it, and then it breaks it down based on how many people actually live in the neighborhood. And then you'll see on here 30% limits, very low income, 60% limits, and low income. And different programs have different thresholds in order for you to be able to move in. So what causes this problem? Well, everybody has recognized the cost of housing is a problem, not just for affordable housing, but for everybody who's trying to purchase a house. Myself, we just moved here, and one of the things that we're surprised is what the cost of housing is compared to what it was just 5 years ago. Right now, we have a supply and demand issue. A lot of economists are saying that there's a 4.5 million dwelling shortage in the United States right now. That's spread out. Certain geographic areas are a lot worse than others. We moved here from the Raleigh, North Carolina area, and because of their growth rate there, they have a huge a lack of housing within the area. And so with supply and demand, we all remember the toilet paper situation during COVID, where you couldn't find toilet paper, so people were selling it on eBay for 10 times the cost. When there's a demand for something and not enough supply, that cost will inherently go up. And you'll see constantly in the news, Texas must build hundreds of homes throughout the state to lower income house. Some Wisconsin communities are hoping that granny flats or accessory dwelling units are one way to help create options, providing additional supply to that housing stock. Housing experts say that there's just not enough housing. All of these are fairly recent articles, the last one from NPR. The increased cost of building houses, specifically with construction costs. This is a chart that looks at the overall construction costs from 2009 up through the second quarter of 2020, and you'll see specifically right around the COVID period, it just cost a lot more to do business. Whether it's infrastructure for supply chains to get the materials necessary to build these houses, labor costs, lending, all of these components really inflated the cost for construction. And it's breaking down several different cities. Unfortunately, Memphis is not one of the cities they looked at, but as you can see, this is a pretty consistent trend throughout the United States. Inflation is also causing an issue that's making the problem worse. As you can see, inflation has skyrocketed around April of 22, but what a lot of people don't, I think, understand about inflation is even if that inflation number is coming down, it doesn't mean the value of the dollar is changing in a positive direction for us. It means our spending power isn't decreasing as much as it might have been yesterday. So while it went from 9.1 to 5%, that sounds like it's a good thing. Well, that means the inflation is only 5%. And when you think about inflation, this is the easiest way to do it. In 1913, if you had a $1 bill and what's that spending dollar for that $1 bill? This chart shows what happens. And the last prediction or last detail I was able to find was in 2021, where that $1 bill would only, the purchasing power of it is only 3.67 cents as of 2021. And it's even less now than it was then. You saw the inflation going up 9. They're saying it's around 2 cents now. So the value of people's money is decreasing. And a lot of people, they save money in bank accounts where they're not making much in the interest, or they have jars full of money, especially people who have a distrust of the financial systems. Their money is actually losing value every day that it's not in something else. Opportunity is causing a problem with affordable housing, specifically changes in the labor market. We're seeing things like a lack of contractors and construction workers. There's now folks like Mike Rowe from Dirty Jobs and the voice of Deadliest Catch. He actually created an organization to help find tradespeople, welders, builders, contractors, because nobody's going into those industries anymore. A lot of people think, oh, I'm not going to make as much as a lawyer, doctor, or a pro football player. Well, in some cases you are. A welder that has been in the trade for about 15 years actually makes an incredible amount of money, much more than the median income for most jobs in America. It's actually an incredibly valuable resource in terms of the economy, and it can be very lucrative, especially for those who go through the apprenticeship programs and learn the trades. Same thing with carpentry. There's all these trades where there's an incredible demand, but that demand is also going back to the increase in labor costs. And we're about to take a next step into a changing labor market. At one point, everybody worked in factories, and the robotics came in and really decreased the number of folks that were working in those industries. We're about to take that next step with the introduction of artificial intelligence, or AI. Recently, there was a publication that said it's not if it comes, it's we're already there, and trying to understand how is it going to affect the labor market. Many of the jobs that exist today might not be around in 25 years, are going to look drastically different than they do now. We're going to have to figure out how's that going to change the labor market, because with the lack of labor comes the lack of income. Education access is also a significant element in terms of it. And the reason is there's a direct correlation and causation between your educational attainment, what you're able to learn, and how much money you're able to make. Because going back to that first slide of what is affordable housing, it's a formula. There's inputs and there's outputs. When you're able to start changing the inputs, you affect the outputs. You're able to increase the amount of money that somebody's able to make. Suddenly you have the opportunity to help them move up in housing as opposed to just the cheapest housing available. Finally, it's social access and issues. In some situations, people feel that they have to stay in certain demographic profiles or educational attainment profiles or economic profiles. They feel almost a sense of guilt if they leave. Same thing with certain communities where they don't want to move out of particular neighborhoods into something much better for them. Well, that also causes problems because that housing stock isn't freed up for others to be able to move into there. That can cause, going back to that supply and demand issue. And part of that is a lot of folks are stuck in this rotation of rental cycles. One of the things that's recently changing, fortunately, is for a long time, when you rented a dwelling unit or a home, the monthly rental payments that you paid didn't have a positive impact on your credit score the same way as if you're paying a mortgage. Recently, some things changed. A lot of larger rental companies are starting to recognize that. Unfortunately, a lot of the mom and pop, where I have a house in another community that I'm just renting out, they're not always reporting those rental incomes. So that's a lot of time and opportunity that actually can work against somebody when they do go to take out a mortgage, because it doesn't show that credit history necessary in order to be able to get a favorable loan. And getting those favorable loans reduces the amount of interest that you have to pay and your interest rates, and then actually increases the amount that you have to pay on a monthly basis for the same home compared to somebody with a higher credit score. Finally, one of the things that I work for the government, but the government hasn't always done a phenomenal job of affordable housing. As an example, Cabrini Green, a lot of people know about it. It was a wonderful concept of social experiment that went horribly wrong. And part of it is there's more and more data coming out that when you concentrate affordable housing into small pockets, it has negative implications, not only for those who live there, but also for others around it. You see increased crime rates, you see increased code enforcement activity, and it decreases the quality of life compared to when affordable housing units are actually spread throughout the community. So I say all that, but there's two types of affordable housing. There is government-funded affordable housing, which really only accounts for 10 to 25% based on which source you look at. Department of Labor and Statistics versus HUD, they have different calculation rates. But government funding affordable housing is actually a very small portion of what it is. But people think that's where it all comes from, when it doesn't. It requires multiple sets of approvals. There's applications involved above and beyond just your regular applications. There's additional checks and balances because it is taxpayer funded. Often it will include additional partnerships. A municipality that I worked for previously, they were going to be partnering with 2 or 3 not-for-profit organizations, the county, as well as a for-profit organization that was going to be doing the construction. So you have to have all these moving parts in order to make it a reality. And it's also restricted. Going back to that chart, you have to meet certain income elements. Once you exceed those income elements, you're no longer qualified. And it causes some problems where folks want to be able to take that next step up, but they don't want to risk losing their homes. Whereas something that's a lot more common is naturally occurring affordable housing. This accounts for 75 to 90% of what people consider to be affordable housing. These are just homes that, because of either age or location or some other qualifier, are actually meet that definition based on a metropolitan statistical area income determination. And that's the majority of affordable housing that's on the market. It uses the existing housing stock. A lot of times these are the smaller homes, 2-3 bedroom. A lot of times it will be like a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom. It also can be multiple different configurations that sometimes, like modular mobile homes, apartments that are above garages, or accessory dwelling units as they're called. This can take very multiple forms as well. It's really going to be dependent upon availability. A lot of times in higher markets, such as the Raleigh, North Carolina area, these are going to be a lot harder to find because there's such a demand for people to come in. Whereas in the Memphis MSA, there's a little bit more of an inventory that allows for these to be in existence. And it's not restricted. So if you increase your income, that's an awesome opportunity. Suddenly you're starting to be able to have disposable income and be able to do things to improve your quality of life. Suddenly you're able to take additional classes and find the resources available so you're not restricted into that one income range. And one of the things that I hear is that Collierville is not affordable. I went on Realtor.com yesterday actually and found some houses as low as $1,300 a month, which I know from when I was in college, that's an astronomically high amount, but that was 25 years ago. So realistically, when people start looking, it's available. It's not concentrated in one area typically. As you can see, there's some down here in the south part of the town, over by the high school for $1,500, some close to Town Square for $1,300. And yeah, there's some that are upper, there's one in the north part that's $4,500. But even over here close to the Germantown line, there's one for $1,200. Given where we're at in the economy and what the market sustains, this is actually pretty reasonable. And we realize it's not for everybody. But part of it is looking at what Collierville has to offer. One of the things that Collierville has done a great job is making sure they're always looking to the future for increasing the quantity of homes as well as the diversity of homes. This is a chart that was created by the planning department looking at the projections, and it showed that by 2040 we'll probably be about just under 66,000, or right now we're around 54,000, give or take. This calculation is based on the number of new homes that get certificate of occupancy. There's a multiplier that's created by HUD from the census of how many persons per dwelling unit, and then there's also a part of the calculation that looks at what's known as vacancy rate. How many of these dwelling units could be considered? And so it's a pretty accurate number once you input all of these details. Looking at the number of residential housing types that are projected to come online, we're anticipating 440 new homes or dwelling units, whether apartments, townhomes, or single-family detached, to become available. Going back to that supply and demand thing, as we introduce additional supply to address that demand, it helps keep those costs a little bit lower for some of that naturally occurring affordable housing. And so yeah, of that, 187 of those are expected to be apartments. Oh, I'm sorry, this was from that had received certificate of occupancies as of July, in 178 apartments, 106 single-family dwellings, 12 townhomes, and I know recently there's another townhome project that's introduced additional certificate of occupancies. But when you look at the total context of what's available here in Collierville, 80% of the housing stock is that single-family detached. We have only 12% is your standalone apartment complexes. 3% is either a duplex or triplex, and then another 5% is your assisted living facilities. There's several of these that have been constructed over the past couple of years. Really large one on Houston Levee as an example. But this is the current makeup as of the end of 2023. You'll see some of these numbers start to move, especially in the terms of the townhouse and duplex category. But looking at some of the projects that we have online that are currently under construction, the park development, which is approved as a planned development, allows for them to get a wider range of options in terms of their housing types. They're looking to do modify it for this north development that's going to have a combination of single-family dwellings and possibly some townhomes up there. We have the Lockwood Plan division that's supposed to bring in eventually 308 single-family, and it's going to be constructed in phases. A lot of developers, they're not going to expend the amount of capital just to bring everything in at the same time. But this will be brought in phases, and this is also off of Houston Levee Road. Villages at Shelby Station, once again off of Houston Levee Road. It's going to be 60 what's known as fee simple townhomes. It's where you own the structure in the immediate vicinity of the lot. If you have a middle townhome, you own the front yard, the backyard, but you don't have a side yard. If you're on an end unit, you have the front yard, backyard, side yard, as well as the structure. but that'll be 60 that are coming online. And then we're starting to get into mixed use subdivisions. These are really popular because this creates opportunities to not worry about your cars much. Suddenly, if you have an opportunity to work from home, you'll be able to walk to retail and restaurant and other resources, which helps alleviate the traffic congestion. We hear that traffic is a significant issue. We hear it a lot, and we're working with developers to really help decrease the need to always be in a vehicle. These mixed use planned developments are a great way to achieve that. This one will have 100 apartment complexes, 16 work-live units, and this is something that has been in plans in the works for a long time. This actually received approval in 2009, but because of market conditions and construction costs, they tend to take a while before they actually be able to move forward. But it was something that had been approved quite a few years ago. This is also a new one, Bailey Station development, what's known as Area 8 off of Winchester by Houston Levy. This one's going to be 25 age-restricted homes. One of the things that we're also seeing is our population in Collierville, there's a lot of folks that want to live here until they're no longer alive, unfortunately. But it creates housing options for them, because not everybody's going to want your 4 or 5 bedroom, 4 bathroom, 2-story home, but creating neighborhoods where it's low maintenance opportunities, where you're living in a community that has a lot more folks that have the same expectations and the same age range as you, really allows for a higher quality of life without having to go into an assisted living facility, and this will create that opportunity. The Byhalia Commons planned development, this is another one off of Collierville Road. Once again, 161 fee simple townhomes, and as of the end of last year, there was 60 of those were constructed. And this is going to be adjacent to a mixed-use town center development as well. I talked about that walkability, and this is yet another occasion where we're going to be able to start realizing that. Byhalia Commons Market Core, which this will be 150 loft-style dwellings, and that once again is kind of a unique opportunity, because a lot of these would be your residential units above commercial or restaurant uses.
Is that grocery store going to be Publix by chance? I'm just kidding. I don't know. That's the big to do is Publix. Yes.
Yeah, this plan doesn't show angled parking, and all Publix have angled parking. So. But this is actually what it's going to look like. It's going to create a sense of nightlife. It's going to create a sense of community. Because one of the things as a planner that we're always trying to get people to do is interact with each other in the built environment in a positive way. When you get people that have a reason to get out of their homes and get out of their vehicles and start communicating with each other, that's what really creates a great community. And we're very fortunate that we have wonderful resources like our town square that naturally does that. Well, not everybody's going to always go to town square. Having pockets of this spread out throughout the community helps us all maintain that small town charm that we've all fell in love with. Another development is Schilling Farms, and you see this under construction right now behind my wife's favorite place, the crumble cookie place. But this is once again going to be kind of that walkable environment where you're going to have a mix of commercial and residential all blended together to really create that social interaction component that a lot of folks are looking for. Going back to the recent empty nester demographics, one of the things that as planners we're recognizing is suddenly they have large amounts of disposable income, and their desires in terms of where they want to live is the same as recent college graduates that don't have kids yet. So you have these two different demographics that actually blend and mix very well because they're looking for the same elements in the quality of life. It's not for your older generations that have mobility issues, because a lot of times these are very walkable communities, and there is that pedestrian or that movement that is created. But you'll have situations like outdoor cafes and other elements to really bring people out of the buildings and create that social opportunity. The Baptist Memorial Hospital, this is a senior living center. This would be 60 memory care units, 30 behavioral health, and 10 units with a total of 18 beds. But this was approved, the preliminary set plan, by the mayor and board of aldermen back in January. When these go through the planning process, it's not just okay, check, you're done. There's multiple phases, and we need to make sure that we as in the town, make sure that these developments meet the spirit and intent of the regulations that are in our zoning code, the future or the land use plan, the transportation plan. And it's not just the planning department. All the departments work together: engineering, building services, fire, police. We all make sure that the developments that are being constructed are really the good developments for the community, and that they're representative of the regulations, plans, and intentions that were set in place by the elected officials. Another apartment complex that had previously been approved and recently received a preliminary site plan is the Ashby Springs Apartments. This one's going to be just under 200 units, and its construction has started. You might have seen some of the work going on over there. Grove Square substation or subdivision, located south of South Rowlett Street, 34 unit subdivision. Once again, this will be paired units, and you're seeing that central green. Once again, pedestrian interaction, commonplace sense of community when people can get together. And this is a little bit of what that will look like. I'm excited because there's a lot of communities that would kill for something like this, and we're able to really achieve it here. So I say all that to really talk about what are some of these new approaches with affordable housing. We talked quite a bit about all of the new stuff that's coming to Collierville over the next couple of years, and how that's going to increase the supply, which helps to decrease the demand to balance out the costs. But one of the things that you saw with a lot of those opportunities is these mixed use subdivisions. This is going to be very important moving forward, especially as a lot more vehicles get on the road. Gas prices are going to continue to fluctuate, and typically when you're in a vehicle, it's not always the best social interaction with people in the other vehicles. You might be yelling, but you're not saying, "Hey, how's it going today?" Getting out of the vehicles, especially in the mixed-use subdivisions, really allow for people to get to know each other, and really help build that sense of relationship. There's a lot of energy efficiency programs that are out there now. We talked about that naturally occurring housing. Unfortunately, a lot of times they have older pipes or older plumbing fixtures. They don't have low flow toilets or low flow shower heads. And there's programs out there now to help property owners renovate their homes to decrease their utility costs. Certain companies will also be able to provide rebates when you're replacing a really high energy demand appliance, such as like an AC unit or a refrigerator, with something that's more energy efficient. Really encourage folks to look into those programs. Alternative building methods are also an opportunity. This is something that not all municipalities are jumping on board with. There's been books written about how you build houses differently. One such talked about how there's ways to actually widen the studs from the all the way up to 24 inches on center, which is quite a bit wider than required now, and even to the point of not using regular OSB sheathing or that strand board that you see on the outside house, and use a rigid foam insulation. And when you change the nailing patterns on the drywall on the inside, it actually meets the building code. You can put the insulation in between, and it's more energy efficient. But there's questions about stability, and it doesn't work in all areas. In hurricane-prone areas, probably not going to be the best option. But it is an option that certain places of the country are starting to look at. And location, location, location. I want to park on this one because out of everything I said, this might be the most important thing. Not all places are going to be able to provide the same resources when it comes to affordable housing. You don't want an affordable housing complex in a far outskirt area that doesn't have access to education, doesn't have access to transportation, doesn't have access to acceptable child care opportunities, is a substantial distance from grocery stores or other retail establishments. You want to have affordable housing in areas that are able to accommodate more than just the housing part of it. This is becoming increasingly difficult to do for a lot of suburban communities, whereas when you get to more of an urban environment like Memphis, where you have all of those resources available, whether it's disability services or hospitals or Veterans Administration buildings, where there's additional resources that can really help change a person's life beyond just where they live. That is critical for the quality of life component that goes into considering where you should do affordable housing. And what we talked about: jobs, education, transportation, and finally quality of life. So I say all that to say it's really a puzzle. The cost of housing is just one component of it. Making sure that you have available job training, not just employment options, but job training, something that can help one ramp up throughout their career. Access to education, not only elementary, middle, and high school, but also like for the trades, for different work programs, financial management programs is something that's not taught enough in this country. And finally, really looking at those other costs. Is it a house that is affordable by rent, but the cost of utilities cost you more than the rent itself? There are those type of situations. Do you have to spend money on vehicle and vehicle insurance just to drive 30, 40 minutes to your job versus be able to live near your job? So there's those other hidden costs that I think need to be considered when thinking about affordable housing. So with that, I'm available if you have any questions. And as always, if you do have any questions now or later on, you can always get a hold of me. My email is mclark@collierville.tn.gov. Email is probably the best way to get a hold of me because I'm not at my desk frequently because I'm meeting with developers and business owners. But if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, and I'll be more than happy to either put you in contact with somebody that can provide the information or be able to provide the information myself. All right. Thank you, everybody, for a great night.